Our planet Earth in entirety is a great place where life flourishes. But did you know that even on it, only the Bharatavarsha, otherwise known as India, is alone supreme in its spiritual ranking? Everyone is taught about patriotism for their country, but for us, the Indians, patriotism is not the same in meaning. It is supposed to be much more. Let us do a small exercise of examining our understanding of the glory of our Bharatavarsha and the greatness of birth that we have obtained here. I won't ask you to answer me, not even in the comment section. Just answer to yourself, because we can never be untruthful to ourselves. And therefore, answering ourselves is a way of self-introspection, which is the best way to identify gaps in our understanding. To begin with, let us ask ourselves, why is our country named Bharatavarsha? No, the answer, what you have in your mind, is most likely not correct. Second question, what do we understand about the religious supremacy of Bharatavarsha as compared to any other place on earth? Third question, how does the transmigration of jivas differ with respect to when one dies in Bharatavarsha and when one dies in other lands? Similarly, what is the unique advantages of being born in Bharatavarsha which birth in other countries do not fetch? Next, when was India visualized as a mother goddess named Bhāratamātā? Does this imagery of India as a goddess and a mother have ancient roots in Hindu scriptures, or is it a recently conceptualized thought? Well, if you know the right answers to all such questions, that means you were trained well. I offer my humble prostrations to your preceptors and also to your parents for having raised you such. If you do not know the answers, do not feel low. I will share everything with you what I have learned from my illustrious preceptors and via my further studies. Stay with me till the end, and together we would learn new reasons to love our nation, and this day onwards our worldview of Bharatavarsha is going to change. We have been taught patriotism in the generic definition instead of Deshabhakti, which is much more than the former term. Patriotism, in a very watered down definition, is devotion towards one's country, and that devotion is attributable only because that person is born in that country or is a citizen of it. Here, in such a definition, the devotion is restricted to vigorous support to one's country. That's all. Here, devotion is not religious. Rather, it is geographical, geopolitical, and revolves around one's own existence and inherited rights. On the other hand, Deshabhakti for India is supposed to be different from the general definition of patriotism, as Deshabhakti is much more than a support for the geographical contour on the world map where Indians live. This Deshabhakti is a stronger emotion. It is a Hindu duty because it is religious. Nation is not just a geographical piece of land on the world map. It is a collective spirit of belonging and identity where everyone shares common characteristics including language, culture, history, artifacts, and ancestry. Every country is great for their people, and for us, the Indians, we have more special reasons to invest our devotion for our motherland. If we understand the real meaning of the very name of our country, our patriotism would transform from a mere support to one's country to devotion in a religious sense, which would no more be a formality to display twice a year. Rather, it would course through our veins like blood and would make us proud of our very existence on this land. It is a popular notion that Bharatavarsha derives its name from Emperor Bharata, the son of King Dushyanta and Shakuntala, but that is not so. There is no evidence to support that. India's name always was Bharatavarsha. Yes, named after Bharata, but which Bharata? is an interesting thing to know. There were several Bharatas in our land. One was Lord Rama's brother in Solar dynasty. We had Shakuntala's son born in the Lunar dynasty. And then there was yet another one named Jada Bharata, and so on. All these men were Bharatas, but in Hinduism the names are not given just randomly. There should be a meaning to that name, and there must be one original being whose is that name. Who was then the original Bharata after whom all these men as well as our country inherited their name? As per our scriptures, the mankind originated on earth from Manu, who was the first Prajapati created by Lord Brahma for the purpose of expanding creation on the earth. In Sanskritam and in various other Indian languages, human beings are called as Manushya, Manuja and Manava. All these terms are derived from Manu. The etymology of Manushya is Manorapatyamiti Manushyaha. Its synonyms are Manushaha, Martyaha, Manujaha, Manavaha. Right from the first Manvantara named after Swayambhuva Manu, all Manvantaras are presided over by a Manu who rules that epoch. Manu creates all the humans as his offspring, and then he provides them nourishment, oversees them for the entire span of the Manvantara for such acts as a caretaker. Because he does Bharana, meaning bearing, he is called Bharata. This is stated in Brahmanda Purana as well as Matsya Purana. For our quick reference, let us see one reference of this fact. The Matsya Purana states, Bharanat Prajananatyaiva Manur Bharata Uchyate Niruktavachanaishchaiva Varsham Tad Bharatam Smritam. Meaning, because all beings originates from Manu and he sustains and bears them, he is called as Bharata. And thus, etymologically, this land is named as Bharatavarsha after him. Now, which is that land which is called Bharatavarsha? This Bharatavarsha is the land which is interspersed between Himalayas at the north and ocean in the three other sides. This is explained in Vishnu Purana saying, Uttaram yat samudrasya himadresha chaiva dakshinam varsham tad bharatam nama bharati yatra santatihi. Meaning, the country that lies north of the ocean and south of the snowy mountains is called Bharatavarsha, for there dwell the Bharatas or descendants of Bharata. In this land, the descendants of Bharata, that is Manu, dwell. Therefore, it must be clear now that this name has nothing to do with Emperor Bharata, the son of Dushyanta. Otherwise, his descendants would only mean the Kshatriyas of the lunar race, who should be called as Bharatas. In that case, what about others who do not hail from the Chandravamsha? They won't qualify to be called Bharatas. There is the limit to the popular stories. That's why the popular stories are good only till a preliminary level. We must always strive to dig further if we really want to gain deeper insights. Now, we know that all the Indians hailing from various races are Bharatas because they are the descendants of Manu, who was called Bharata. So, since we now know the real meaning, is this the end? No. We are just getting started, and many interesting secrets are ahead to be discussed. Now, let's again think a bit deeper. There are few thought-provoking points. We know that humans as a species were the descendants of Manu. That is why humans are called as Manavas or Manushyas, because these two terms are etymologically related to Manu. We also know from some other scriptures that several prominent people of India migrated out and settled in other countries too. For example, Mahabharata tells us that the king Yayati's son Turvasus descendants are the Yavanas. Descendants of his another son named Anu were the Mlechas. Out of India migration theory is real, which is out of scope for our current discussion, but in summary, European, Turkish, Arabian, etc. all foreign lands were populated by the migrants from India. They all worshipped Hindu gods but did not adhere to Vedic practices, hence became Mlechas, the barbarians. For instance, the warlord Kala Yavana, who was the king of Yavanas, worshipped Lord Shiva and got boons of invincibility in battlefield. He later attacked Mathura, and by the clever trickery of Lord Krishna, he was eliminated. So, irrespective of what continent one dwells in, all humans on the earth are Manavas for being descendants of Manu. Hence, by extension of logic, they must also be called Bharatas. But then, why is it that the country interspersed between the ocean and Himalayas alone is termed Bharatavarsha, and why the indwellers of the land alone are eligible to be called as Bharatas? This tells us that even though the definition of Bharatas as the descendants of Manu is correct, it is not adequate to explain the puzzle related to the land of Bharatavarsha. There must be something more to the story, and indeed there is. Learning is a gradual process and happens step by step. We have all begun our journey at the basic level, considering our country's name was based on Shakuntala's son Bharata. Then we rose a bit higher and learned the meaning to be based on Manu. And now it's the time to understand the highest truth. The most original being whose name is Bharata is none other than the god Agni. To a layman, fire is just fire, but actually Agni has different names based on various functions. The cooking fire is not same as the fire that burns the dead bodies in the cremation ground. The fire that is lit using a matchstick is again not same as the fire which is ignited rubbing two arani sticks in the Vedic sacrifices. Every type of fire has a name. For example, the fire present in the vapor of all matters is called Ushma fire. The fire that burns in the solar orb, that is inside the sun, is called as Shuchi and has the capability of purifying everyone. This tells us why Hinduism recommends worshipping sun god. Again, towards the evening time when the sun sets, that evening solar heat has an Agni by name Prashanta. Likewise, there are many more names such as Tapa, Agrayana, Vishwapati, Garhapatya, Ahvaniya, etc. Based on several functions, Agni Deva has a corresponding distinct name. For every rite, the corresponding form of Agni is invoked via mantras under the corresponding name. The Agni which is invoked in the Vedic sacrifices is called as Bharatagni or simply Bharata. The Vedic etymology of this name defines it as Bharatva Ramanatva Havir Bharana Samarthyat Agnihi, which means for his ability to bear and for his ability to carry oblations to the gods and making them rejoice, he is known as Bharata. By carrying the libation to gods, he distributes them the right shares, and this makes the gods content and graceful on the mankind. Thereby, he ensures the welfare of the mankind. So, here as a father of all, he bears and fulfills his fatherly duty to look after the welfare of his devotees, that is, the performers of Vedic sacrifices. This is why the Yajurveda in the Taittiriya Aranyaka addresses all the devotees of Agni, that is, the adherents of Vedic life and performers of Vedic sacrifices, as Bharatas, and commands them saying, Agnimichchadvam Bharataha, meaning, you all be the desirers of Agni, O Bharatas. So, with this we now understand that all the performers of Vedic yajnas were Bharatas. Here, that does not mean only the Brahmanas alone. Rather, the patron kings, the sponsorers, the arrangers, the astikas who had high belief in the efficacy of the sacrifices, etc., everyone had a share of effort in making the yajna successful. In short, everyone who had faith in Vedic sacrifices and supported them in one way or the other were all worshippers of Agni. Hence, Agni is a Bharata for all of them, as he bears and sustains them all. It is like some pharmaceutical company and a few scientists may develop a vaccine for a pandemic, but the fruits will be reaped by everyone in the country, as the vaccine is for everyone and everyone will enjoy the life-saving drug. Likewise, everyone who has faith in Vedic yajnas via Agni are all Bharatas. Few may actually utter the mantras and offer the libations into the fire, but the fruition would be for the welfare of everyone living in that country. Also, everyone worships Agni in some form or the other every day. The very lighting of the Deepam, which is the lamp, is termed as Deeparadhana, meaning worship of the Deepam flame. There is a popular prayer verse associated with it, which begins with Deepam Jyoti Parabrahma, which every householder recites while lighting a ghee lamp. That is the simplest form of Agni worship which everyone does. Likewise, yajna may be performed by a few appointed Brahmana priests, but the objective would be always the welfare of the world. Therefore, all the supporters of Vedic yajnas were all the desirers of Agni, as the Yajurveda proclaimed. Hence, all were the Bharatas. The same Agni named Bharata, being pleased, blesses the mankind with health, wealth and development. Hence, he is known by another name, Pushtimati Agni, as stated in Mahabharata. Gurubhir niyamair yukto bharato nama pavakaha agnihi pushtimatir nama tushtaha pushtim prayachati bharatyesha prajaha sarvas tato bharata uchyate. The fire called Bharata abides by severe rules. Pushtimati is another name of this same fire, for when he is satisfied, he vouchsafes Pushti, that is health, development, to all creatures. And for this reason, he is called Bharata or the sustainer. So, in summary, we all are Bharatas because we are desirers of Agni named Bharata, and he is our benefactor. Then the question arises, how is it then a specialty of the indwellers of the Indian subcontinent alone? Anyone, even from outside India, can be a Bharata if they follow Vedic dictates of karma, perform Vedic sacrifices, or worship Agni, can't they? The answer is, they cannot. In the connection with the greatness of Bharatavarsha, there is a legend in the scriptures which says, in the days of yore, once all the gods assembling together urged their chief, Indra, to identify a land on earth which would be deemed sacred for conducting yajnas. Indra assured the deities and, assuming the form of a spotted deer, ran on earth. He traversed large distances continuously for many days and stopped thereafter. Whatever region he traversed and covered from start to stop in the form of a spotted deer is declared as the region sacred for conducting Vedic sacrificial rites called yajnas. And there onwards, that land was called as Yajna-bhumi. Because yajnas are the Vaidika karmas, that region was designated as the Karmabhumi. It is only that region which is sanctioned for yajnas and karmas. No other place on the earth has that holy ordinance. That region is none other than the Bharatavarsha, which is interspersed between Himalayas and ocean. Hence, our India is the land where Vedic sacrifices are ordained and become fruitful. Referring to this incident, the Manava Dharma Shastra, alias Manusmriti, gives the injunction saying, Krishna sarastu charati mrugo yatra svabhavataha sagneyo yajniyo desho mlecha deshas tataha paraha, meaning But the region where the spotted deer roams by nature is to be known as the land fit for sacrificial acts. Beyond that is the land of the Mlecchas. Matsya Purana summarizes the conclusion and says, "Na khalvanyatra martyanam bhumau karma vidhi smritaha." Except in the land of Bharatavarsha, the prescription of performing karmas has not been commanded for anywhere else. Attesting this inference, the Brahma Purana says, "Prithivyam Bharatam Varsha Karmabhumi Rudahrita Karmanaha Falabhumischa Swargancha Narakam Tatha." Meaning, the Bharata subcontinent is the land of holy rites in the whole of the earth. Swarga and Naraka are the realms for reaping the fruits of these holy rites. The karma in this context is not about action in general sense like walking, dancing, etc. Rather, it is in the sense of the Veda Vihita karma, meaning the religious actions as prescribed by the sacred scriptures, which, when performed, generate merit, and when opposite actions are performed, generate demerits, and accordingly the fruition would be rewarded in the form of pleasures or pains. To attain to Swargaloka, that is heaven, one needs to do religious rites with the desire for gaining the fruition. Those rites done with phalakamksha, that is desire for fruition, result in attainment of Swargaloka, where one would be rewarded with fruition in the form of enjoyment and pleasurable experiences. On the other hand, when residents of Bharatavarsha perform papakarmas, that is, evil deeds, which are opposite to the scriptural injunctions, they accumulate sins, and thus they migrate to Naraka, that is hell, after their deaths here. Those who did meritorious activities yet could not gather enough punya phalam to enter Swargaloka, attain to the other heavenly realms in the middle regions. Likewise, based on some partial merits, people attain to Patala, etc. netherworlds. There are others who perform the prescribed actions as duties without attaching any desire for fruition, offer the fruition to the Supreme Being. Such pious beings do not go to temporary stations like Swarga. They get emancipated instead, from where they do not return to this painful world again. All these 5 end states that we discussed are only attainable on the land of Bharatavarsha alone, as stated in the Vishnu Purana, which says, "Itaha swargascha mokshascha madhyamam chantascha gamyate," meaning, from here the beings attain to heaven, emancipation, a state in the mid-air or the Patala, etc., subterraneous realms. It reiterates the same words differently and this time introduces a word Tiryaktvam, which is very meaningful, which we will discuss shortly after reading the complete verse. Vishnu Purana says, "Ataha samprapyate swargo muktim asmat prayanti cha Tiryaktvam narakam chapi yantyataha purushamune," meaning, from this region heaven is obtained, or even in some cases liberation from existence itself, or men pass from hence into the condition of brutes or fall into hell. That one word Tiryaktvam is so important. The term Tiryak literally means horizontally, transversely, sideways, etc. And in common usage, this term is used to refer to animals whose spine is not straight like humans. Hence, they move with their spine being horizontal to earth. But this term here is referring to Gati, that is, transmigration of a jiva, that is, individual soul after the death. So, here it says that if a jiva has not gained enough merit to rise to higher abodes or even to lower abodes, and also isn't eligible to be taken to Naraka for severe punishments, such a jiva would not transmigrate upwards or downwards after death of the body. He would move horizontally to the earth's plane and would be reborn outside of the sacred Vedic land of Bharatavarsha in other countries, and would be devoid of Vedic practices and would live an un-Vedic lifestyle. That could be in the form of any sentient being, human, animal, bird, tree, etc. And after several lifetimes and doing good deeds, when there is enough merit to be eligible to be reborn in the Bharatavarsha, then again that Jiva takes birth here in any sentient form. And again, it takes a lot of effort and merit to gain the human birth on the land of Bharatas. This is again evident from the Vishnu Purana, which says, Atra janma sahasranam sahasrairapi sattama kadachit labhate jantur manushyam punya samchayat. It is only after many thousand births and the aggregation of much merit that living beings are sometimes born in Bharatavarsha as humans. And that is why time and again our scriptures, sages and preceptors keep reminding us how precious is a human birth that we have obtained on this Bharatavarsha, and thus how critical it is for us to use this chance wisely to achieve liberation, or at least higher abodes. This should explain how high is the rank of Bharatavarsha in the spiritual ladder, and that should fill us with patriotism and devotion towards this great land of ours. Since in Hinduism, the very concept of karma with respect to adherence to Vedic injunctions and performance of the same is ordained to be valid and fruitful on the land of Bharatavarsha alone, attainment of higher abodes or gaining liberation is only possible from the Bharatavarsha alone. Hence, emphasizing the greatness of this Bharatavarsha, the Vishnu Purana further says, Atrapi Bharatam Shreshtam Jambudvepe Mahamune Yato hi Karmabhuresha Yato Anya Bhoga Bhumayaha. Bharata is therefore the best of the divisions of Jambudvipa because it is the Karmabhumi. The others are places of enjoyments alone. For that reason, the very celestial deities applaud the residents of Bharatavarsha for achieving the very feat of getting birth in this land, saying, Gayanti devaha kila gitakani dhanyastu ye bharata bhumi bhage swargapa vargasya pada hetu bhute bhavanti bhuyah purushaha suratvat. The celestial deities themselves exclaim, Blessed are those who are born even from the condition of gods as human in Bharatavarsha, as that is the way to the pleasures of paradise or the greater blessing of final liberation. Lord Sri Rama in Valmiki Ramayana urges that upon receiving birth on this Karmabhumi, one should strive to perform the auspicious karmas as prescribed by the scriptures. He says, Karma bhumi mam prapya kartavyam karma yachubham. Having reached this land of religious actions, one should perform auspicious rites. So, even those who obtained the rare gift of birth in Bharatavarsha due to lack of awareness and guidance on scriptural injunctions, or due to not believing in them, are migrating outside India and settling abroad. Their choice may be stemming from necessity of a luxurious living or a wealthy lifestyle or whatever. But they are losing two things. One, even if they perform religious rites in foreign lands, their rites won't generate any karma phalam because karma is null and void outside India, due to which they cannot rise to higher abodes after their deaths. Secondly, their departed ancestors residing in Pitrulokas, for whom annual Pitru karmas such as Shraddhas and Pindadanas must be performed to ensure their gratification and welfare, all those would get stopped because the karmas performed in foreign lands do not yield fruition. They are dummy actions. Thus, their departed manes would live in distress, unable to receive timely food and water offerings, and thus they would curse their living offsprings and their lineage, leading to unforeseen bad circumstances that these people and their progeny would have to undergo. Well, these people who are settling abroad, it's the choice they are making for themselves. But what they are unaware is that Inadvertently, they are sealing the fate of not only their ancestors but also of their progeny when they choose to give birth to their kids outside India just for a small aspiration of gaining citizenship by birth for their children. But once their children are born out of India, as per scriptures, they cannot do Vedic karmas, and if they live there itself and finally die, they cannot even transmigrate to heavenly abodes. We never know when that Jiva would gain the opportunity to be born in India once again. And all this turmoil happens because of the parents' mere choice of getting citizenship by birth for their children. Is there a solution to this problem? Yes, there are workarounds. There is a case study of a wealthy NRI who happened to be a devout follower of Sri Chandrasekharendra Saraswati Swami, who is also known as Paramacharya, the then pontiff of Kanchi Kamakoti Mutt. That NRI used to perform Shraddhas regularly in the USA for his departed ancestors, and he did that for 30 years. But Paramacharya informed him that all such efforts are fruitless when performed outside our land. As a solution, he advised the NRI to approach a competent Brahmana in India and perform remedial rituals for offering the pindas for the past 30 years at once, and then advised him to do further Pitrukaryas by visiting India henceforth. Hinduism is such a beautiful religion that it has rules and at the same time it offers workarounds for people who want to correct their mistakes. Therefore, it is advisable that anyone who wants to make the things right should consult a learned Shastrajna and follow the instructions given by him. Surely, there would be some prayashchittas, that is, atonement procedures, to overcome some of these deviations. And for those who have already settled abroad, it is always advisable to give birth to children in India and then take them abroad after a few months. At least, that way their children would have the rare privilege of birth in Bharatavarsha, and if they ever decide to return to the Vedic roots, they would have option to come back after undergoing some purificatory rites and atonement procedures. Before moving on to the next topic, let me present another interesting aspect related to the conversion of non-Vedic land to Vedic land. We have learnt that only the Bharatavarsha land was sanctioned and approved for performing Vedic rites. No other continents had this approval, but there was a procedure to convert the other continents to gain validity for Vedic rites. That process was through expansion of Bharata borders through the medium of suzerainty expedition. Learned sages would identify a righteous-souled powerful king of Bharata and would inspire him to be the emperor of the earth by bringing as many countries under his subjugation as possible. All those continents which would be subjugated under the governance of Bharatavarsha, all those continents would come into the Vedic fold for as long as that subjugation lasts. The procedure to rise to the status of emperor was via either conducting Rajasuya sacrifice or Ashwamedha sacrifice. Before the commencement of the actual sacrifice, the king, desiring to be the emperor, would send his armies and conquer all other countries, either via overpowering them or accepting their willing submission. Here, we must not confuse this process with invasion. Both deeds are poles apart. Invaders invade other countries to loot them, and every such invasion has always resulted in death, rape, destruction, and brought sorrow to the invaded country. Bharatavarsha has never invaded any country. The military expedition for border expansions as part of Rajasuya sacrifice or Ashwamedha sacrifice had the underlying motive of dharma, and hence no emperor had ever brought sorrow on the countries who came into the fold of the Indian emperor. That is why it is a fact that India never invaded any country. However, India had expanded her borders outside via the Vedic means. Rajasuya sacrifice and Ashwamedha sacrifice both come with options of friendly submission in which the expansion mission of Vedic land would get completed peacefully without any bloodshed. And those kings who did not want to willfully submit, there would be a battle, but more often than not, such battles were done with the intent to force submission via defeat, not via kill. Invasion is a phenomenon which is totally contrary to Vedic expansion process. Invasion subjugates countries only via bloodshed. In the Rajasuya or Ashwamedha Yajna expeditions, when the countries were finally subjugated, they would offer gifts to the emperor in terms of riches. All the riches brought as gifts from the subjugated countries would be employed to conduct a large-scale Rajasuya or Ashwamedha sacrifice. And upon the success of the rite, the king would be deemed as the emperor, and all the countries he conquered would be governed under the same laws and policies as the home country. Through such a process, even the Mlecha countries, when subjugated by the king from Bharatavarsha, those countries would be eligible for conducting Vedic rites as long as the subjugation lasted. As an example, let us see one such emperor from our own ancient histories. A king of the Haihaya dynasty named Kartavirya of immense might and righteous heart had single-handedly conquered all the 7 continents and 7 oceans. He brought the entire earth under his sovereignty and then installed 7 Yajnasthanas, Vedic ritual hubs, in the 7 continents. This is mentioned in the Harivamsha Parva of the Mahabharata, which says, Tena iyam prithvi sarva saptadvipa sapattana sasamudra sanagara ugrena vidhina jita Tena saptasu dvipeshu saptayagya shatani vai praptani vidhina rajnya shruyante janamejaya Sarve yajna mahabahoh tasya asan bhuri dakshinaha sarve kanchana yupaha cha sarve kanchana vedayaha Sarvair Devair Maharaja Vyamanasthair Alankritaha Gandharvair Apsarobhischa Nityam Eva Upashobhitaha. Meaning, that self-willed warrior has conquered all of this earth together with its continents, towns, cities and oceans. And O Janamejaya, we have heard that this king Kartavirya procedurally established 7 Yajnasthanas, Vedic ritual hubs, in 7 continents, all of which are endowed with golden sacrificial posts and altars, that is, flourishing on all occasions with abundant generosity, while all gods hovered in their hovercrafts to observe their Vedic rituals. Gandharvas used to sing and Apsaras used to promenade at those Vedic ritual places. Now, a question may arise. How would an emperor, no matter how righteous souled he may be, would be able to make non-Vedic lands Vedic just by subjugating them? The answer lies in the fact that no human who is not a portion of Vishnu would ever be able to enjoy the earth as king or emperor. Mother Bhudevi, who is the goddess of earth, is Vishnu Patni. Therefore, all the kings, doesn't matter small or big, would inevitably have Amsha of Lord Vishnu in them. This is why it is said, Na Vishnuhu Prithvi Patihi, meaning, without being Vishnu, one cannot be the husband, that is, Lord of the earth. The Manusmriti also attests this, saying, Balo api na avamantavyo manushya iti bhumipaha mahati devata hyesha nararupena tishtati. Meaning, even though an infant, the king shall not be despised as if he were merely human, because he is the great god in human form. Likewise, every emperor was Vishnu as clarified in the Matsya Purana, which says, Vishnoramshena jayante prithivyam chakravartinaha manvantareshu sarveshu yatitan agateshu vai. Meaning, emperors in the world in all the manvantaras, be it past, present or future, are all born with the portion of Vishnu inherent in them. Therefore,
When such a king expands his boundaries and rules external countries by subjugating them, those all countries become Vedic lands because they are now ruled by Vishnu. And how exactly is that so? The answer is, the Veda says, Yajna vai Vishnuhu, which means Yajna is verily Vishnu. Therefore, whichever external lands come under the sway of the Emperor of India, they all get ruled by the Yajna Purusha Vishnu himself, and thus they become Vedic lands, gaining sanction for Vedic rites. Now, such an emperorhood is not permanent. It lasts as long as the kings of that dynasty could continue their suzerainty by their might. If that dynasty declines or becomes extinct, someone else from Bharatavarsha must decide to rise for the noble cause. That is how, from time to time, several kings came as emperors, conquering the vast earth. Even King Vikramaditya's sway spread far and wide beyond the normal contour of Bharatavarsha. But today there is no emperor in Bharatavarsha. Hence, the Vedic eligibility for rights is again limited to the borders of the land of Bharata alone.
Moving further, until now we have looked at the spiritual significance of the Bharatavarsha. Let us now look at the divinity of Bharatavarsha at the physical level. This land bears 7 primary mountains which are divine. They are called Kula Parvata-s. From these divine mountains originate rivers, who are divine goddesses who flow on this land in the form of water bodies, and mere touch of their waters have the capability of purifying the sins of the indwellers of this land. The names of these sacred mountains are Mahendra Parvata, Malaya Parvata, Sahaya Parvata, Shuktiman Parvata, Riksha Parvata, Vindhya Parvata, and Pariyatri Parvata. There are thousands of other sacred mountains whose names cannot be enumerated. All these mountains are divine and host sacred places of pilgrimage upon themselves, which are countless. This is the land where each river that flows is a sacred goddess who nourishes us like a mother when we drink her waters. These rivers are mentioned as the mothers of the universe. The Brahma Purana tells us that all these rivers are identical with Ganga and Saraswati in their sacredness and sin cleansing abilities. It says, Sarvaha Punyaha Saraswatyah Sarva Ganga Samudragaha Vishwasya Mataraha Sarvaha Papaharaha Smritaha. Meaning, these rivers are holy. They are all identical with Saraswati and Ganga. They fall into the sea. They all are the mothers of the universe. They all dispel sins. When we visualize a river just as a mere water body, we would not care whatever happens to it, as long as our purposes and needs are met. But when we bring a little change in the way we look at these rivers and realize that divine goddesses exist in the form of rivers, and as the mothers of all, they nourish us till our death with their milk, which outwardly appears as water, then our very perspective towards them will change totally. Would we then be able to dump garbage in the sacred waters? Would we be able to spit, urinate, or pollute their waters in any other nasty ways? No. The moment we start looking at these rivers as divine mothers, we would automatically become environmentalists, and we would never want to pollute them. What does this all mean? Not knowing the greatness of our land and the sacred entities that exist here, our patriotism remains a mere formality. But when we learn every detail about the greatness of our sacred land, we would naturally develop a bond of love with our land. That is the Deshabhakti, which no more remains a formality. This Deshabhakti burns as a perpetual flame within our hearts for posterity. There is more interesting stuff ahead to be discussed, but before that I wanted to stay in the laps of these river goddesses for a few more moments. The fact is, mere reciting the names of these sacred rivers have the ability to purify us of several sins. So, though I understand that the modern day people do not have patience to sit on a topic for long, yet, in the interest of doing good to the audience, I would spend a few moments reciting the names of the rivers and tell from which of the 7 Kula Parvatas they originate from. Even from mere general knowledge standpoint, one could hear these names. Those who feel this is unnecessary may skip 30 to 40 seconds forward, and I will meet you there with a different point altogether. The rivers that arise from the foot of the Himavan Parvata are Ganga, Saraswati, Sindhu, Chandrabhaga, Yamuna, Shatadru, Vipasha, Vitasta, Airavati, Kuhu, Gomati, Dhutapapa, Bahuda, Drishadvati, Devika, Chakshu, Nishtiva, Gandaki and Kaushiki. The rivers that originate from the Mahendra Parvata are Vitrushoma, Rishikulya, Vanjula, Tridiva, Langalini and Vamshakara. The holy rivers rising from the Malaya mountain are Kritamala, Tamraparni, Pushpavati and Utpalavati. The rivers that originate from the foot of Sahya Parvatas are Godavari, Bhimarathi, Krishnaveni, Tungabhadra, Suprayoga and Papanashini. The rivers that take their source from the mountains Shuktiman are Suvikala, Kumari, Mandaga, Mandagamini, Kshaya and Payoshni. The rivers originating from the foot of Vriksha Parvatas are Shona, Mahanadi, Narmada, Suratha, Kriya, Mandakini, Dasharna, Chitrakuta, Chitrotpala, Vetravati, Karamoda, Vishachika, Atilagushroni, Vipasha, Shaivala, Sameruja, Shuktimati, Shakuni, Tridiva and Kramu. The rivers which have their source in the foothills of the Vindhya mountain are Shipra, Payoshni, Nirvindhya, Tapi, Vena, Vaitarani, Sinivali, Kumudvati, Toya, Mahagauri, Durga and Antahshila. The rivers which originate from the Pariyatra mountain are Devasmriti, Devavati, Vatagni, Kali, Venya, Chandana, Sadanira, Mahi, Charmanavati, Vrishi, Vidisha, Vetravati, Shipra and Dravanti. With this, we have known the greatness of the Bharatavarsha, but still, as long as it is seen as a mere land, we would neither understand its full glory, nor we would attach our sentiment and bond with it in love. So, is there anything special left to be told which would have even greater impact on our patriotism than with whatever we discussed thus far? Yes, there is. Many people think that the concept of depicting Bharatavarsha as Bharatamātā and visualizing our country in the form of Mother Goddess is a later day concept. Some say it was first conceived by Sri Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyaya in 1880 in his book Anandamath, and later by Sri Rabindranath Tagore in his painting done in 1905. In the book Anandamath, Sri Bankim Chandra Chatterjee wrote a song Vande Mataram, which visualizes India as being identical with Mother Goddess Durga and praises her glory. All those people who think that the Bharata land as a divine mother is just a figment of the imagination of these eminent poets are all wrong. We have ancient scriptures suggesting the same, and also illustrious Vedic scholars holding the same sentiment. The entire Bharatavarsha is pervaded by Mother Uma's presence. At the top, she is Kashmira Puravasini. In the middle, she is Vindhyachalavasini. And down south, she is Malayachalavasini. She is present across the length and breadth of this land. In this connection, let me begin with the opinion of Sri Kavyakantha Vasishtha Ganapati Muni. To talk about him, I would need a separate session altogether, because it is not possible to sing his glory in a few minutes. Someday, I would take his story up for narration in a separate series of talks focusing on the illustrious traditional stalwarts of our Hinduism. But for now, a brief introduction would suffice. Ganapati Muni was an illustrious Vedic scholar who had the ability to compose hymns in Sanskritam on the fly without needing any preparation time. Hence, the term Kavya Kantha was an honorary title awarded to him, which literally means one who has poetry in his throat. He incarnated during those times when India was under British rule, and his heart got agonized seeing such a sad state of the motherland. He had composed several hymns of 1,000 verses in Sanskritam on various deities, but out of them the Uma Sahasram is his most popular work. This is a hymn containing 1,000 verses in praise of Mother Uma. This hymn has all the secrets embedded within it, which are present spread across various scriptures. If one needs to gain all the knowledge contained in Devi Mahatmyam and Devi Bhagavatam and other scriptures in a capsule form in one place, this is the hymn to go for. In this hymn, he feels pained seeing India captured by British and offers a special prayer, that is Kanchanastavam, to the Divine Mother, calling her to grant prosperity to this country. He says, Sri Karna Esha Tava Lochananchale Bhantya Daya Dayataya Prabodhitaha Etam Savitri Mama Kanchanastavam Shrutva Tanotu Bharatavane Shriyam. Meaning, O Savitri Mother, your auspicious or prosperous ears located at the end of the eyes, awakened by the beloved of kindness, may grant prosperity to the country, Bharata, after listening to my special prayer. He was such a Deshabhakta. He had a few dozens of youth as disciples who wanted to fight for freedom. They approached him and asked him to give a slogan which they could shout during protests and rallies. Do we know what slogan he gave them for the freedom fighting? Umam Vande Mataram. With that slogan, he clearly established oneness between our motherland with the Divine Mother Goddess Uma. In his Uma Sahasram hymn, this 25th bunch of verses inside the 700th set of verses totally are dedicated to displaying Mother Uma as pervading this entire Bharata land. He points out in which aspect the Divine Mother is present in which location. She pervades as Kumari in Kanyakumari, as Parvatavardhini in Rameshwaram, as Meenakshi in Madurai, as Akhilandeshwari in Jambukeshwaram, as Kamalambika in Kamalalaya, as Shivakameshwari in Chidambaram, as Apita Kuchamba in Arunachalam, as Chinnamasta in Kundalipattana, as Kamakshi in Kanchipuram, as Jnana Prasunamba in Srikalahasti, as Bhramarambika in Srishailam, as Bhadrakarani in Gokarna, as Mahalakshmi in Karavira Kshetra, as Bhavani in Tulajapura, as Bhuvaneshwari in Odisha, as Viraja Devi on the banks of river Vaitarani in Odisha, as Kalika Devi in Kali Ghat, Kolkata, as Kameshwari alias Kamakhya in Nilachala Mountains, Assam, as Mangala Gauri in Gaya, as Annapurna alias Visalakshi in Varanasi, as Nanda Devi in Vindhyachala, as Avantipura Naika in Ujjain, as Sharada in Kashmira. One may think that these are various Shaktipitha shrines on this land. How then is this land a symbol of the Divine Mother? The secret answer is encoded in the story of how Goddess Sati's body was fragmented. Here also, what the popular story we know is not what it is in its inner meaning. We will see that. But first, let's talk about the popular version which we have heard always. That story in short goes like, unable to bear insult to her husband Shiva by her own father Daksha, Mother Sati immolated herself and her body was then carried by Lord Shiva on his shoulder, wandering everywhere like a madman. Lord Vishnu used his Sudarshana and cut her body into numerous fragments, and Shiva, who was carrying her on his shoulders, was traveling through the skies. The fragmented parts fell across the Indian subcontinent in various places, and whichever part fell, there a Shaktipitha shrine got manifested. Now, let us understand the hidden secrets inside this story. Everyone who narrates this story says Vishnu used Sudarshana to cut Sati's body. But the truth is, Vishnu used bow and arrows to cut her body, as clearly stated in the Devi Bhagavatam, which says, Vishnustu tvaraya tatra dhanuruddhamya marganaihi chichedavayavan satyas tatasthaneshu te patan. Lord Vishnu, quickly wielding his bow, there cut off the body of Sati to pieces by his arrows and made the parts of the body fall then and there. So, is it a contradiction? Nah. Academic scholars see only contradictions. Traditionally trained eyes would see opportunities for correlation. So, here is the hidden truths behind this story. Can Shakti ever die? No. Even the very first law of thermodynamics states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Likewise, the Divine Mother did not die. She became imperceptible to the sinners of the world who could not see the greatness of Shiva. So, once everything settled, out of the kindness for the mankind, Shiva and Vishnu worked together to make the imperceptible Shakti visible to mankind once again, and this time even in the physical form of shrines. Vishnu used his Sudarshana, that is, good vision or foresight, to survey the entire land of India to identify spots appropriate to install Shakti in a particular visible manifested form. And then, using his arrows, he cut off her body into various fragments. And Shiva, being in motion, helped scatter the fragments all over the country. There were not 18, not even 51. There were 108 places where the Shakti was installed in fragmented aspects, as confirmed in the Devi Bhagavatam, which says that in those 108 seats, Shakti pervades in the form of 108 forms. Iman yashta shatani syuhu pithani janame jaya tat sankhya devyascha parikirtitaha. O Janame Jaya, thus I have mentioned to you the 108 pithas and as many devis. With that play of those two gods, they established the Shakti in every inch of this land. There are no more body parts visible as such. That land where whichever part had fallen, it imbibed that goddess in that aspect. Conversely, picking every piece of her body, that is, the land pieces, and placing them together, we would be forming the Indian subcontinent again. Therefore, this story is using a Sanketika Bhasha, that is, metaphorical language, to teach us that the entire Bharatavarsha is the seat of Shakti, where she pervades in every inch. Hence, this land is verily herself. There is no problem in worshipping India as Bharatamātā. Bharatamātā is verily Uma in every inch. Now, after learning that in every single place on this holy land, Mother Goddess Uma pervades, it would take a stone heart for anyone to not naturally get devoted to this motherland. When we see Mother in every village and every city, would we stay stoic, seeing some enemy encroaching upon our borders? No. Our patriotism would naturally boil in our veins. When we know every inch is pervaded by her on this sacred Yajna-bhumi, would we be able to carelessly litter and dump garbage and pollute the earth? We would no more need the government to teach us Swachh Bharat idea. When we love our nation and see the land below our feet as our own mother, we would naturally want to keep her clean. We would not dump our garbage in neighbor's backyard, even if we are dead enemies. Because we may be enemies, but we share the same mother. We would not need to be told to purchase Swadeshi goods. We would ourselves get inspired automatically to support our country's economy by buying made in India goods as much as possible. Likewise, the case studies and applications of our love for the land are immense. Our bond of love for our mother in the form of Indian subcontinent that bears us would develop naturally and would transform into utmost reverence, which in other words is called unadulterated Deshabhakti. This Deshabhakti is not just patriotism, it is much more than that. It is religious devotion. So, before we sign off, let us pray that, by the grace of God, may our patriotism be not limited to a spark that bleakly blinks just twice a year. May it burn as an eternal flame inside our hearts, reminding us of who we are, what our duties are, and what's our end goal. We are given a life on this Bharatavarsha, which is the Karmabhumi, and this life we might have earned by accumulating tremendous amounts of merits in the past hundreds of births. And then, what are we doing now? The sad state of affairs of our people is that around 80% of the Hindus live a Western lifestyle, like Mlecchas. This is the lifestyle that is valid for other countries because they aren't eligible to perform Vaidika karma. But in our colonial hangover, we imitate them, try to live by their standards, and finally waste the rare chance of utilizing this human birth in Bharatavarsha for our liberation. Of course, to be alive, we need to stay with the changing world, and hence studies, earning, and everything is needed. But side by side, right from the childhood, if we teach our kids to practice their dharma, then I don't think that is an impossible thing to ask for. Before going to school, they can spend 15 minutes in the puja room and light a diya, recite some stotras, that is hymns, offer prostrations, and leave for school. If this habit is inculcated right from the school days, they would be able to take out time for worship even when they grow up as busy office professionals. Everyone has same 24 hours in a day. So when some people are able to perform the Nitya Karmas and still attend their office duties on time, what is your excuse for abandoning your Vedic duties? Think.